Welcome to KCS at Home, 3rd grade math. Today we will have a review of Ready Math Unit 2, which is about number and operations in base 10. Today's lesson will include addition and subtraction practice, rounding to both the tens place and the hundreds place, as well as multiplying by multiples of 10. I'm Mrs. Perry, and I'm a 3rd grade teacher at Sarah Moore Green Magnet Academy. I'm also a Knox County Schools math demonstration teacher. Our agenda today, we'll have a number talk. We'll use multiplying by multiples of 10 for that. Then we'll work some addition problems and practice rounding with the answers. We will work some subtraction problems and practice rounding with those answers. And then finally, I'll leave you with a challenge called Zoo Math. Today's strategy focus for addition and subtraction will be using open number lines and using expanded form. In our Unit 2 number talk, we're going to solve a problem about a tiger. The tiger's at the zoo. The tiger at the zoo eats 60 pounds of meat a day. How much does the tiger eat in 6 days? So I want you to think about that for a minute because that's 60 groups of meat. 6 times. Or 6 groups of 60. One way that you may decide to solve this is to draw a grouping picture and then think to yourself, I could count these up by 6s. I know 60 and 60 is 120, and 60 and 60 is 120, and 60 and 60 is 120. So that's 320, 40, 60, 360. Or maybe you thought to yourself, wait a minute, that 60 is the same as saying 6 tens times 6, or 36 tens. And 36 tens is 360. Or perhaps you're fancy like my Tier 1 students, and they love to use the distributive property. So if they saw this, they would probably say 60 times 6. I'm going to break the factor of the 6 into 5 and 1. And then I'm going to say 60 times 5 is 300, and 60 times 1 is 60. So then 300 plus 60 equals 360. Oh, forgot my second set of parentheses there. Whoops. Now let's practice adding and then rounding. In our first problem, we see that Johannes and Andres want to combine their collection of Pokemon cards. Johannes has 578 cards and Andres has 394 cards. How many do they have combined? Well, since we're taking 2 groups of cards and putting them together, that means, because that's what combining means, then we are doing a part and a part together into a whole. And so that means addition. The problem that we're going to need to work is 578 plus 394. Now, as you'll notice on the screen, I've already written the equation for us. You can be writing that down while I'm talking. And then we're going to use our open-ended number line to help us solve this problem. Now, an open-ended number line has no numbers on it already because you get to decide how you jump. And the way you solve this may be different from the way that I choose to, and that's okay as long as we end up with the same answer. I want to start with the bigger number, because that means there's going to be less work for me. 578 is at the beginning point on my number line. Now the first thing I want to do is get rid of as much of this number as possible by adding it on. So I'm going to go to the hundreds place, and I'm going to add a hop of 300. So if I say 578 and I hop my 300, which is now no longer a part of this number, I put it on my number line, that means that I am going to come up with an answer of 878 because all it changed was the hundreds. So now I notice that I'm at 878, and that gives me an opportunity to get to a friendly number. a number that's easy to work with. So I'm going to add 2 little 1s on here. So I'm going to go over to the 1s place, and if I take 2 1s out of the 1s place to add with, that's only going to leave me with 2 more. So I'll need to keep that in mind so I don't mess up and forget to add those back in sometime. Now, if I add 878 plus 2, I'm going to come up with 880. Well, now I'm at 880. You know, it would be easy for me to get to the next 100 because that would be a good friendly number. If I'm at 80 and I need to get to the next 100, it's 90, 100. I'm counting by 10, so that means it's 2 10s. So I want to make a hop that is 2 groups of 10 or 20. And if I do that, I'm going to use up 2 groups of 10 here, and that's going to leave me with 7 groups of 10. So let's see, 880 plus 20 brings me to the next 100, which is 880, 890, 900. Wow, now I'm at a really easy number to work with. If I look back up to my original problem, I can see that I still have 7 10s and 2 1s left. And that's 72 that needs to be added on. So I'm just going to go ahead. If I'm at 900, it's easy to add on 72. So I'm just going to I'm going to draw a hill of 72, and I'm going to hop 72 to get my final answer of 972. Now, I know that I am finished because I have now used up all the numbers that I had available to me to add with. So my final answer is 972. When you're using the number line, like I said, you can make your choices of how you hop. These are just the ways I chose, but maybe you can find a different way. Now let's work on our rounding. The answer to our problem was 972. Let's round that number to the nearest 10. If I'm rounding to the nearest 10, then that means what I'm really paying attention to is here, is the number 72. Now the 900 is going to stay there, but I'm going to pay attention to the 72. So I know that if I'm thinking of 10s and I have 72, the first 10 I would work on is rounding down would be 70. So it would be 970 on one end of my chart. And on the other end, it would have to be 980 because that's the next 10. Well, when I round, I have to think about the halfway mark. Remember, I'm just looking at the 10s, so 7 10s is 70 and 8 10s is 80. So halfway in between would be 75, 975. So now I've got some thinking to do on my number line. If I were to take 972, where would that fit on my number line? If I put it on this side, well, it's not going to fit because 975 is bigger than 972. So I'm going to have to go over here. If I'm at 970, 972 is really close. So in looking at that, I can see that 972 would be rounding in the nearest 10 back to 970. I can tell that because it is much closer to 970 than it is to 980. Now let's try the same problem that we just added a minute ago, but this time let's use expanded form. So we've got 578. And so what I've done is taken that number and I've expanded it out into each of its place values. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the second add-in, 394. So now I need to add them together. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is just add everything together and see what happens. I know 8 plus 2 is 10, plus 2 more is going to be 12. Oh, I've already seen something I'm going to have to work with. I know 90 plus 70, well, 9 plus 1 is 10, and then you have 6 more, that's 16. So that makes 90 plus 70, 160. Uh-oh, there's another problem I'm going to have to deal with. And then 500 plus 300, well, that's easy, that's 800. Now, I've added each place together, but I've noticed a couple of things. First, I've noticed that there's 12 in the ones place, and that will not work because the most I can have in the ones place is 9. So we're going to get rid of that, and we're going to regroup it over here. So I'm going to take this one group of 10, and I'm going to add it to what's in the tens place, and that's going to make this become 170. And the ones place now, all I have is 2. But that's still a problem because look at the tens place. The most I can have in the tens place is 9 tens or 90. So that's really not going to work. So what I'm going to have to do is take this 100 and move it to where it belongs, over in the hundreds place. So now that I've added 800 and 100, I come up with 900. The last thing I need to do is take my partial sums and add them together to get my final sum of 972. 972. And then we go to our final answer and we write in 972 cards, because when Johannes and Andres combine their cards, they have almost, oh, that's close to 1,000, guys. That's a lot of Pokemon cards. Okay, so now that we've reviewed addition and 2 strategies with addition, let's practice some subtraction, and then we'll do some rounding with that answer as well. So we have a problem about the Prodigy math game. And I don't know about you guys, but in my class, my students really like to play Prodigy on those rainy day recesses. They like to get together and duel. So in this problem, it says Tajay is on level 241 of the Prodigy game online, and Juelz is on level 175. How many more levels will Juelz need to complete to catch up with Tajay? Well, I've already given you this problem for the sake of time. So because we're comparing the two, what we're looking for is the difference. And when you're looking for the numerical difference in something, that means you're subtracting. Now, yes, I know some of you would say, oh, but I could start at 175 and count up. And you're absolutely right. You could. You could turn this subtraction into addition. But today we are practicing this subtraction. So we're starting at 241 on our open number line. And if you'll notice, I've already labeled my hundreds, tens, and ones because I need that to help me keep track of what I have put on the number line. So I always like to start with the easiest thing, and that's the hundreds. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all my hundreds by subtracting 100. And so I'm going to mark out that 100 because I've taken it up here from the number and I've put it into action on that number line. So when I take away 100, I get 141. Now, I still have 75 over here that I need to take away from 141. I'm thinking, what's the easiest hop I could make that would take away and give me a fairly easy number to work with? And so I'm thinking probably if I just take the tens, because there's 4 tens of them, I'm going to take the 4 tens out of 141, and I'm going to subtract 40. All right, so now I have taken 4 tens out of the 7 tens I have and put them into action on the number line. But I still have 3 tens that I have to do something with. But I'm not there yet. I'll get to that later. Now, if I take 141 and I take away 40 from that, I'm going to get the number that looks like this. All I've done is removed the 4 tens and put a 0 in that place value. So now I'm at 101 in my subtraction count. You know, it would be really, really easy right now to get rid of that little 1 right there and make it a friendly number. So I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to mark out the 5 because I am going to take 1 out of that 5 to put in action. So let's subtract 1. There you go, little number. And of course, since I'm taking 1 away from 101, that is going to give me 100. Now I'm at an easy friendly number to work with. I've got 3 tens and 4 ones left for me to deal with. And you know what? I think since it's at 100, it would be really easy to get rid of those 3 tens right now, because that's 30. And I know if I put those 30 in action on the number line and do 100 take away 30, I'm going to wind up with, yep, you got it, 70. Now, if I look at where I'm keeping track of my subtraction, I've still got 4 ones I've got to use up. Well, I know that if I have 70 and I count back 4, I'm going to go into the 60s. And let's see, let's count back. 70, 79, 78, 77. Wait a minute. I made a mistake there. Oh, watch out. Did you catch me? Let's try it again. 70, 69, 68, 67, 66. Ah, the answer would be 66. Now, I don't know about your teacher, but I'm forever on my students about making sure they label each hop and put the operational symbol. Because did you see what happened? It's so easy to count the wrong thing when you're not thinking and seeing things correctly. So you have to be careful, especially on the number line. So our final answer is that 66 more levels is what Jewels is going to need to catch up with Tajay. All right, so let's take our answer of 66 from that problem and let's use it for some rounding practice. So we're going to take 66 and we're going to round it to the nearest 100. And this is a type of rounding problem that a lot of kids get mixed up with. Because you have to think, when you're rounding with 66, you know if you go up, you're going to hit 100. But a lot of people get confused about what would be below that. Well, anytime we start counting with our whole numbers and we're counting up, we should be starting to count with the very first number that we know. That's a whole number, and that number is 0. Because you say 0, 100, 200, 300, 400. So I want to take 66 and figure out where it goes on this rounding number line. But there's something about, oh yeah, when you're rounding, you have to figure out where the halfway point is, because that's the rule that helps you decide if you go back to the smaller number or if you go forward to the larger number. So if I take half of 100, I can think about quarters and dollars, and 2 quarters is half a dollar, which is 100 cents. So that would be 50. So I've got 50 in the middle of my number line. So now I've got to figure out, where does 66 go? Does it go closer to 0 or does it go closer to 100? Well, I know that if I'm at 50 and I hop 10, I'll be at 60. But then I got to go up a little bit more to where 66. So let's look at where 66 is on our rounding number line. Is 66 closer to 0 or is it closer to 100? Look at the size of this space. This space is huge. Now look at the size of this space. It's much smaller. That tells me that 66 should round to 100. So if I'm rounding 66 to the nearest 100, then 66 is going to round to 100. And that's another review for subtraction and rounding. Now we're going to take that same problem and use expanded form. But this time we're subtracting. So I'm going to take 241 and expand it out to 241, and then 170 and expand that out to 175. Excuse me, that was 175. And now I am ready to do some subtraction. Okay, so I'm going to always add in my operation so I know what I'm doing. And now I'm going to think for a minute about what's going on here. Well, if I have 1 and I need to take 5 away from that, that can't work. I know that I need to regroup. I need to come over here into the tens place and take one group of 10. So that's going to leave me right here with 30. And the group of 10 that I took is going to come over here. And now it's going to be 10 and the one that I already had, which makes 11. Okay, so that looks good so far. But now I've got 30 and I need to take 70 out of that. Well, I don't have enough because I only have 30. So I'm going to have to go over to my hundreds place and get 100. That's going to leave me 100 because I'm going to regroup and get enough over here in the tens place so that I can actually subtract this correctly. So I'm taking 100 here, and I'm going to add it over here with my 30, and that's going to give me 130. Something really cool that my students have thought of, and it's helped a lot, is they think of these as ATM machines. So at the hundreds ATM machine, you can only take out 100 at a time. And at the tens ATM machine, you can only take out $10 at a time. So that's something that helps them remember. I thought that was pretty cool. So now I have all of my regrouping done. All I have to do now is figure out what's going on. So if I have 11 and I have to take 5 away, that's going to give me 6. And if I have 130 and I want to take away 70, well, I know 13 take away 70 is 6. And that would mean that 130 take away 70 would be 60. Now let me go to my hundreds place. Now remember, we had to do some regrouping, so we're down to 100 and we're going to take away 100. So that's going to leave me with nothing. Now, you don't have to put a 0 there, but if you want to, just to hold the place and make sure that you don't think, oh, I forgot to finish the problem, you can. Now I'm going to look at what I have down here, and I'm going to combine these back together. So 60 plus 6 equals 66. So I took my two partial differences and combined them back into one difference. And so my final answer was 66. 66 more levels. So today we've practiced adding on an unmarked number line. We've practiced subtracting on an unmarked number line. We've also added and subtracted using expanded form with regrouping. So you can make up some problems for yourself and have a great old time practicing using those two strategies. And now it's time for our Zoo Math Challenge. So for our challenge, I am leaving you with this idea. There are some great zoos that have online animal profiles. The Australia Zoo, the Cincinnati Zoo, and the Smithsonian National Zoo. You could go to any of those websites, and here's your challenge. Research an animal that you're interested in and use the numbers you find to create math problems about that animal. For instance, you might ask, how many toes are in a herd of 50 rhinos? Or, how much does a lion eat in 1 week? How much does 2 lions eat in 1 day? You can come up with different problems and work with your family to write those out and solve them. The other thing you could do is draw and color a picture of your animal to go with your math problems. Don't forget to write the name of the animal. And then share it with somebody. Share it with your teacher if you have a class app. I'm sure he or she will be really proud of you. Or send it to a friend in a text or in an app. You could even cover up the answer and ask them to work it and see if they get the right answer. And then they could share the strategy they used with you. Always remember, anytime you're using the internet, to ask your parents for help and practice appropriate internet safety. And finally, a shout out from the Sarah Moore Green 3rd grade teachers to our kids, because we love and we miss you a lot. Thank you for watching KCS at Home today with Math 3rd grade. If you need the work packet, it can be printed off by going to knoxschools.org/KCS at home, or you can pick up a Unit 2 packet from one of our food distribution sites located at schools around Knox County. Specific locations can be found by going to the Knox County Schools website. Thank you and have a great day.